What's going on, everyone? So today I just wanted to go over a quick video on how to make an alternative to an acrylic template. And the reason why you might want to use one of these is if you were making the same item multiple times, whether it's a small batch or a big batch. Usually you would buy an acrylic template. If you don't have a cutting die or a cutting press, you would use one of these to trace out your marks onto your leather. That way you can get the same cut every time to make the same items the exact same size. There are people online who make these acrylic templates and they use a laser cutter for the most part, and that will result in a much accurate cut, and it will also let you have holes for your punch lines for stitching or for setting a snap that you can easily trace into your leather. And this is why it's good to have a template like this that has some sort of plastic or acrylic, as most of them are made out of, because it does become a pain to trace over your leather using paper, especially when you are making multiples of that item. So this is kind of an alternative. Instead of spending $20 to $30 on an acrylic template. So what I use is just a thin cutting mat from the dollar store, and they do come in a pack of 2 at just the average Dollar Tree. You can also find these at Walmart. I believe they have a pack of 4 of them for around $4. And these are really thin so that you can actually just cut right through them using your razor blade. So what I do to make these is I just print out my template that I made on the computer. I will cut around a certain part of the template. Then I'll just trace the paper template onto the cutting mat. That way I know where to glue. I'll just apply some glue, whatever I have laying around. A lot of times I'll just have super glue or Elmer's glue. It really doesn't matter, as long as it holds strong enough to be able to make cuts into the template. Then I'll apply some glue in the traced out area and just place down my paper template onto the cutting mat. I'll usually let this sit and dry for 10 minutes. And then if it's a squared pattern, it will be nice because you can get really accurate once you use a ruler with it. Run the razor blade through the cutting mat and the paper. And once you trace out the template on the cutting mat, you'll be pretty much set to go. And since these are really thin, you can easily just punch through one of these with a stitching iron. This way you know for certain patterns and projects where to start your stitch line. So for instance, this one that I have here I made, and this just has the plastic cutting mat. And it is a bit confusing when you're wrapping the wallets, because I do like to pre-punch the holes. This way when I wrap it, I can just stitch it up. So it does take some time to figure out where your stitch lines are gonna go. And to make it easier, I just punched out holes to where I want to start my hole punch on both sides. This way it'll help speed up the process of making your item. That way you know exactly where to start your punches for the stitching. It also helps when you're using a curved edge for your wallets or for whatever type of leather good you're making. This way, even if it's not perfect on the line, every wallet will have the same mark in it, so you'll be closer than just freehanding, or you'll be closer than using a paper one. You'll avoid scratching into the face or what will be shown on your leather good if you use one of these. One of the downsides to using one of these is that the backside can be a bit slippery, so it can be easy to kind of move around a bit, especially if you're using some type of leather that has been finished with oils. A way to help avoid that is to scratch up the surface a small amount. I'd probably recommend using around a 700 grit sandpaper, just so that it doesn't scratch the actual leather. And if you're kind of like worried about scratching the leather a bit, with the backing, I'd say just leave it. As long as you have a strong grip onto your template, you won't really have that problem. That's why I didn't do it here. It's just smooth. Plus, these do come in two different textures. The front side is really smooth, and this one is what I would say to glue the paper template onto. And then this side, which is a bit rougher, I'd probably say should go against the leather. That way there's some grip as opposed to using the top side of it. Another plus of using a cutting mat like this is that you can use a hand-drawn template as opposed to having to use the computer and making a vector file, especially if you're not really into doing that, or if you're really new to making templates online or don't have the software to do it. You can just draw up a template, maybe test it out on a piece of paper, and then you can just glue the piece of paper right to it. As opposed to using a vector software to make your lines, turn it into a PDF, and then print it out. You can just take whatever you drew by hand. And with an acrylic template, you might not always be able to find someone that will turn your image into a vector file, or they might charge you more to do so. So it's just something to take into consideration. Yeah, like I said, it's just really good for something that's cheap as an alternative to using an acrylic template. It's definitely not a complete substitute for an acrylic template because they do have a much thicker piece of acrylic as opposed to this really thin plastic, where you could sometimes get away with running your blade across the template. But with these, it's really easy to cut into your cutting mat with a razor blade. So I would avoid using one because you will end up slicing into your template. But if you have a scratch awl anyways and you use that for most of the time to trace out your patterns, it won't be any different, and it'll just be a bit sturdier. That way you don't have to worry about a piece of paper folding on you. So like I said, I hope this helped anyone just find some sort of alternative as opposed to using a piece of paper and getting upset that they scratched the face of their leather good, because I have definitely done that before and I try to avoid doing that as much as possible. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Have a good one. Bye.